Hey, welcome back. Let's see if this works first. That's the real question. It means they're making money. That's correct, man. I hope it's working. Let me double check. That's the real question. Okay. Welcome back to Tailosive Tech Live on YouTube, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry, testing some things in today's stream. So it probably looks and sounds just a tiny bit different, but I wanted to ramble a little bit about this article, this news that was going around, at least according to a sampling report doing research on the HomePod Mini. It has doubled Apple's market share of HomePod, which I found the wording of that one quite hilarious just because, 0 times 2 is still 0 at the end of the day. But yeah, I was honestly hoping it would more than double with the price of the speaker falling so dramatically. It went from $350, and then Apple did like a permanent price decrease to $300, and and after that it still didn't do too well, so now they've gone to a $99 um starting price for the HomePod, and all of that work to only double the market share just shows me that okay, Apple, I get the ecosystem thing. I'm within it too. I love my iMessage. I love my AirDrop. I'm sure that the market share, exactly like YOLO said, went from 1% to 2%. Very likely. I'm sorry, I didn't clean up the background very much. Uh, I can move everything there. Now it's professional looking. But yeah, it's like market share goes up so much, and Apple loves to keep things locked down, right? And I think what's likely holding back the HomePod Mini even more so is just Apple insisting that it needs to be this type of device where, okay, you can only use it with Apple Music, you can only connect to it via AirPlay, and there's no other I/O. You just have to do it through those things, and they kind of barely started opening it up to the third party streaming services, but obviously not Spotify, which is the main one. And I think if they really wanted the HomePod to have any substantial market share, more than a jump from 1% to 2%, they would actually change it to, it's got the technology for Bluetooth in it. Just make it a Bluetooth speaker. Can you imagine how clean it would look, especially with the new color options they've offered on the HomePod? Like, the two yellow HomePod minis with a yellow iMac. And over AirPlay, you really can't get much low latency audio play. I've tried, trust me. When the HomePods first came out, I bought two of them, and I was trying to use them as like a stereo pair for my iMac Pro, but because you have to do everything over AirPlay, the latency is so bad you can't really do anything with it. If it was Bluetooth, you probably could. There would be a little bit of latency, but definitely manageable. I've edited videos with AirPods in on my Mac, and it's really fairly low latency with Bluetooth as is. So yeah, more portable speakers support AirPlay. $100 is still too much when you can easily get an Echo or Nest Mini for less than $50. Don't Echo support Apple Music now? I'm pretty sure Apple Music's on everything. But yeah, I mean, the price point, I understand Apple having a tax at it being $100. It's certainly more expensive than all the others, but in my experience, it certainly sounds better. And I think we've all come to the agreement Apple nailed that. Okay, they got the sound quality down. First HomePod sounded great, and yes, I've heard the HomePod Mini. It sounds great too. So that's not the problem. I don't think it's an issue of sound quality. Um, However, it is, yes, the best, but it would be interesting to see a HomePod Air that you could take around with you. I wonder how many people would actually buy that. I guess there's a lot of them, but it would certainly need to be more Bluetooth compatible. I really don't even think making a mobile speaker would turn it into that much extra, because what Apple's going for with the HomePod is it's for the home, right? I don't think it would be much of a HomePod if you took it wherever you wanted. But I think it's the connectivity that's bugging me the most. It's not that you can't take it with you on places, because Apple would probably just say, use your phone if you want Siri on the go, or use your watch and AirPods. This is meant to fill the room with audio. It's not meant to fill school hallways, or it's not meant to fill the bus with loud noise. To me, it's just like, turn it into a more addressable market so that it's more than just, okay, people want a speaker for the kitchen, people want a speaker in their bedroom that can play music and set timers occasionally. But if you actually supported some connectivity with this thing, people could use it as a Mac accessory, people could use it for work more so than just play. Um, and I think they could go hand in hand. You can treat it as a smart speaker if you want to, um, and if you don't, then yeah, you can live with it. Echo does support Apple Music, but it disconnects every day, so you have to go through the process of approving it through Apple and Amazon. Really? That sounds more like a bug. Um, yes, thank you, James. I know I have a watermark because I'm using Streamlabs. I'm aware. You don't have to spam. I hope we get an iPad Mini with Face ID. Basically, iPad Pro Mini would be great. Whenever Apple's working on the next round of iPad Pro updates, I would just say sneak in a little sneak in a little iPad Mini refresh at the same time, and just it doesn't even have to be a seventh generation iPad Mini. Just have an iPad Mini like the one we already have now, and then make an iPad Pro in 3 sizes instead of 2. Like they have MacBook Pros in 3 sizes, right? So it's not that inconceivable. There's way more inconsistencies in the MacBook Pro lineup. I don't know how you can really use the argument of, oh, that would distort the iPad Pro lineup too much. It would be too complicated. It's like, you have a 13-inch MacBook Pro with a touch bar, 2 Thunderbolt ports, and a headphone jack. You have a 14-inch MacBook Pro with no touch bar, mini LED, 3 USB-C ports, headphone jack, SD card slot, and HDMI. It's like you have all of this variety in the MacBook Pro lineup, and most people are in favor of there still being some kind of entry-level MacBook Pro, so why not with the iPad as well? Um, yeah, who cares about HomePod? Exactly. No, not enough people, allegedly. I'm not using mine too much. Um, it's nice as an AirPlay speaker on occasion, but I really think that Apple tried really hard to make a smart speaker that's like within their ecosystem and very locked down, and they have seen the consequences of that. It's like, okay, you tried your best to do the Apple thing of keeping it simple and keeping it locked down because that's just our ecosystem and that's how it works. And I'm like, okay, Apple should probably only keep doing that if it's working. And given the HomePod Mini has only doubled HomePod's market share, which was already insanely low, doubled market share from 5 to 10. I don't think it was that much. I was joking. It was more 1 to 2%. um, do you like OBS or Streamlabs better? I thought you used OBS. I've very briefly been using Streamlabs. How long have I been live for? That's how long. However long I've been live for, that's how long I've been using Streamlabs. So I'm toying around with it. I haven't used it long enough to come up with an opinion by it. But OBS is okay for the most part. It gets the job done, and it's very simple. So it covers the basics. But I want to see what I can do via my iPhone, essentially. So for those curious, I don't know if you noticed, but you aren't on the MacBook Pro because the MacBook Pro's right here. So, yeah, I wanted to see what live streaming would be like directly off my phone, and there's not really an OBS app on iOS. There is a Streamlabs app, which has been fairly problematic for me in the past. It's very buggy, and I had to tinker with a lot of the settings to get it to do exactly what I wanted, but for now, it seems okay. We'll see how it ages. We'll see. Over time, I've had the app get more unreliable. So there was a lot of testing I've done with Streamlabs where the audio would always get out of sync, and there's nothing you can do about that. The most frustrating bug, because everyone points it out and they won't stop talking about it, and simultaneously there's no button. Like, I don't know what people think I can do. You think there's a button that says put the audio in sync? Like, that's not a thing. There's no feature. I have used StreamYards before, yeah. Thanks to AirPlay protocol being openly available, I managed to get AirPlay on my record player, much better than a HomePod. Wait, your record player supports AirPlay? So you send audio to your record player. It's not really a record player at that point. You're just utilizing the speaker that's built into it. Let's see. Have multiple Echo Dots and tried for years, but the constant having to reapprove it was annoying. Figured it's Amazon's way of pushing people to sign up for the Music Unlimited, so I bought the HomePod. There you go. Amazon was trying to annoy you to until you bought something, but instead you just bought Apple's product. Original HomePod was perfect at $199 when it was on sale. Anything more was too much. Yeah, man, I kind of feel that way about AirPods Max. I'm like, anything more than $350 ain't worth it, except we haven't got a permanent price reduction. Have you tried any astrophotography apps on the iPhone? The camera app. I basically just pointed it at the night sky and done some night mode pictures, and it turns out pretty great. But no, nothing like designated astrophotography apps. I don't know of that many, so if you know of some you like. Oh, it's through a Raspberry Pi, and you're just utilizing the speakers. Okay, so you want one sound system that plays your vinyls that can also play your what's it called, AirPlay stuff off your phone. Your image is crystal clear. What camera is this? So now we've switched to the iPhone camera, which is understandably better than the MacBook webcam. And it's just now going to be a matter of how much data does this burn through? Because, of course, Starlink has been buggy lately, which is a shame because I really like Starlink. And it does great literally at everything we do besides the live streaming. Like it uploads videos fast. We watch live streams all the time. We watch TV shows all the time and movies, and I download things all the time, all through Starlink, and it does great. The only thing that it's still showing it's like unreliable slash beta period is the live streaming because you need a fairly high upload speed that's very consistent, and Starlink is kind of volatile connection, which doesn't really matter most of the time. Oh wow, this would be an interesting test. We'll see what happens. But thank you, TechMed Rainer, for the super chat. Sorry, my animations aren't the way they normally are when I go through Streamlabs, but thank you for the super sticker. But yeah, I noticed that on Starlink the streams kept getting laggier and laggier, so I still test stream them with Starlink all the time, but for a stream where I just want a stable connection, I want to know if this can be a decent backup. Can it be a backup when necessary, or maybe a long-term replacement because I'm streaming over Mint Mobile. I'm not streaming over Wi-Fi. And if I try to do a hotspot through my MacBook, there's only a certain number of hotspot gigs you can have. That's how Mint Mobile works, but as far as I can tell, that's how most mobile carriers work. They can give you unlimited data, but then on the hotspot, they cap it at a certain amount. And honestly, all carriers offer unlimited data that after a certain point, the speeds get way slower. So we'll see how this does long term. But I was just curious. Michael says Nocturne or something. It's an app, and some YouTubers were able to use it to mimic the astrophotography love from the Pixel. Oh, okay. Gotcha. Is it free? David says, realistically, do you think Universal Control will get delayed again? At this point, I'm not convinced it's coming out just because why is it taking this long? I don't understand. It was like the flagship feature, in my opinion, of macOS Monterey. I don't know what else people were excited for other than this. And they rolled it out in one beta that my friend Nick got, and so he's had Universal Control because I don't think Apple even issues that beta anymore. But he loves it and he still uses it, and he's like, it works fine. I don't know why Apple's resisting. So what is the holdup? Why does it need to be delayed if they had a beta when it was working for the most part? If it's held up because it doesn't reach Apple's quality of excellence when it comes to like low latency and reliability, is that a hardware limitation? Like, is this actually something that's going to change if Apple sends out an update? Okay, we lowered the latency through this over-the-air update. So the stream is better than normal because it is less laggy and looks better. Yeah, well, that's what I was going for. I'm not in favor of the streams being laggy. It's just the other benefit to this, even if Starlink was working fine, my Mint Mobile cellular is not that fast with upload, but I think what I'm noticing with Mint Mobile versus Starlink is Mint Mobile is fairly consistent. I could be wrong. If in the middle of this live stream I start lagging, we'll figure out, okay, this isn't a perfect solution either. But at least in the testing I've done so far, Mint Mobile doesn't have faster upload than Starlink, but it's very reliable. It's very solid connection, and it just kind of, for the most part, will stay at the same speed, which is not inherently much better, but for streaming, that's a good thing. And then when I'm uploading content, it would be on a separate internet service provider. So in case you guys aren't aware, like I was working on a tech video earlier, and I needed to post it, so I started uploading. Now, Mint Mobile or Starlink aren't going to be very good at uploading a video and live streaming simultaneously, both of which kind of consume a lot of upload data. So if you're uploading a video, you probably shouldn't live stream unless you have insanely good internet, like gigabit up. If you have that in your area, congratulations. I don't, and it would not be cheaper for me to just move to a place that has fiber. I've seen that suggested. That's not cheaper either. But if I am able to live stream from my cell phone cellular connection, hopefully the audio is okay. I don't know if you guys notice a difference in the audio from the normal streams or if the connection. I'm glad to hear you guys say it looks more crispy. I think this is the highest resolution I can stream at. I don't think Streamlabs supports 4K, even though my phone does. Um, but if the audio's okay and the connection's okay, then that would mean I can be live streaming while my MacBook is uploading a video, which is like a double win because it's like, okay, great. Now I can be live streaming as I'm posting something. Whereas before, if I'm doing everything off of one internet connection, you have to pick your battles, one or the other. It's like, oh, I want to live stream, but I can't because my video's uploading, so I have to wait till the upload is done. And Comcast couldn't do this either, for the record. I tried back then. People says audio cut out for like 10 seconds. All good. Really? Wonder if that was just you, Mohit. Did the audio cut out for anybody else for 10 seconds? James says the audio is great. Unreal Cousin says the sound is normal. Okay, cool. David says, what are the main limitations of iPadOS for you? For me, the biggest impediment is not being able to write to drive/upload code to microcontrollers like ESP32 or Arduino. Yeah, that's not a super common use case for me, but I guess the biggest one would be the lack of like adequate file system. Like I can do it. I did try to import footage, but it's just there's a lot of mini things. It's not usually one big thing. The main limitations, I guess, the file system being a lot less capable than the Mac OS is, like trying to view files off of drives that are more advanced, like the red codec. Okay, David says audio didn't cut out for me. Audio's fine so far. Okay, great, great. I'm happy to hear that. Wonderful. Um, I can literally see the atoms and the molecules of your prose. Super high quality. TechMed says no audio issues. Great, thank you. I appreciate the feedback. I'm glad it's working so far. During my testing, I would be in the middle of a Streamlabs stream, and then suddenly the audio would get out of sync, which I don't know how to fix because there's no button that says put audio in sync. So hopefully that doesn't happen, but I'm sure the chat will never let me forget it if it does. Anyway, yeah, the bigger one with iPadOS would be, of course, the file management system not being able to read as many zip files and red codecs and all the things I'm used to my Mac being able to support. And for my personal workflow, external monitor is a big one. The fact that whenever you plug an iPad into an external monitor, it basically just mirrors it, and that's it. There's no scaling. You can't really do much with that external monitor unless you're lucky enough to find a third-party app like LumaFusion that may just so happen to put the preview of what you're editing up on the big screen, and that's about it. It's like, okay, it's a little bit better, but just having a full screen display that I can completely work off of, that I can dock my MacBook with, is a huge selling point of Mac OS, because it's like, okay, great, I can take all this power with me on the go, I have all of this editing capability, and then when I come down to sit at a desk, I can blow it up on a big screen and just kind of, have much more screen real estate to work with. iPad can't do that. And one issue that comes up a lot that I have appreciated Mac for a lot is just having external webcam support. So if I want to do a more higher end live stream, I'm not doing a super high end one right now. Maybe the lighting could get better if I open this up. Let me just see. Nah, not much. I realize the curtains are kind of drawn. So I might be able to squeeze a little bit more detail out if there's better lighting. We'll find out. But yeah, I still like the ability to plug in like my Blackmagic with a cam link into my Mac and have an external webcam. External microphones are also a big one, which the iPadOS technically supports, but the options are so limited with it. Like I tried using a USB-C adapter to plug in my external microphone here just off, well, I can just show you guys. this external microphone here, I wanted to plug into my iPad, but I turned down the audio as much as I can, and it was still super loud and it was peaking. And there's no like settings or system preferences really on iPadOS to let me go in and say, okay, you're accepting too high an audio signal. Like, let's tinker that. Let's lower that down so it's not peaking. Otherwise, you have to hope that the third-party apps you're using let you adjust the microphone settings, which most of them probably don't. So that's kind of frustrating. So it's really not like one serious big limitation. It's like a bunch of little ones stacked together. And it changed depending on the person. Like for me, that's what I just described to you as my biggest issues. For you, it's probably not that big a deal, but what the big issues you listed are, not being able to write to drives, upload code to microcontrollers. That's not a big deal for me, but that's the thing is that's why I kind of stopped suggesting in the past that Apple should update iPadOS to give it more pro features because there's so many. There's basically no hope, in my view, that Apple will just in 1 year suddenly add, or even 1 to 5 years, even in 5 years of iPadOS updates. Are they really going to add every single thing that each of us Mac users are big fans of that we're like, can you change this? Can you change this? Can you change that? All of these things could be fixed within one generation if all they simply did was just let a dual boot option come to iPad, because we already know what's capable with macOS. We already know what we can do with MacBooks and iMacs. We have all of the tools and software, and we have everything built for this. We're well aware what it's capable of, and we know that the iPad has all the necessary hardware to boot macOS. It has the M1 chip. It's got a display. It's got speakers. It's got a biometric. It's got a keyboard and mouse support, so it can do all that. And I'm not saying macOS should be the default OS. It should just you can charge money for it, for all I care. You could lock it in settings and say, if you want to dual boot macOS, you got to spend another $300 on software. Okay, at least there's a way. Basically, I just want any way, shape, or form to have one device that can do all the great things a Mac can with all the great things an iPad can. And right now, there's still no way to combine those two products. Doesn't matter how much money. You could spend $15,000 and you'd still have to buy two separate devices. And I'm just saying, I don't care if it's expensive, just make there a way to combine the two so I can have the benefits of both. A cellular Mac with Face ID, even if there's I/O limitations, right? Like I talked about my iPad Pro Max concept of like, okay, it doesn't have a headphone jack. It doesn't have the SD card slot. It doesn't have Ethernet or whatever. It doesn't have MagSafe. Okay, I'll lose all those. And let's say when you dual boot it into macOS, the touchscreen just doesn't work. Just like Sidecar. That's how Sidecar works. If you want to turn your iPad into an external monitor, you can, but the touchscreen doesn't work unless you use the Apple Pencil. Do the same thing. But if we're just trying to hope on, well, iPadOS will get better, it's going to take forever. Because every single year, iPadOS gets these tiny, insignificant updates that barely change anything. So that just drives me nuts. Let's see. Would you rather have your iPad Pro or your Apple Watch if you had to get rid of one? I use my watch quite a bit. Main thing I do with my iPad Pro is like general media consumption, which I could do on a MacBook, but also I do all my video thumbnails on the iPad. So it would be annoying, but I could probably do all my video thumbnails on my phone. It would just be a lot harder and take longer. So I guess I would lose the iPad just because I don't, the iPad I use for work mostly. I don't really take it with me that much. So the Apple Watch is on my wrist all the time, though. That goes with me to social events and parties and, I take it on trips and everything. So I would notice not having a watch quite a bit. I would definitely keep the watch, I think. How soon do you think Qualcomm computing will come to... Oh, quantum computing. Sorry, I don't know why I read that as Qualcomm. Will come to Apple in-house chips. Man, that's something I know so little about, so I shouldn't comment on it, but I'm going to say 5 years. The main thing that I like on Mac is the multitasking is much better, and if you want to do app development, you cannot on iPad. iPad's software is just a lot more basic. And it's been that way a long time, I think is my frustrating part, because I get the argument people use all the time. The argument is always, well, it's not meant to be a Mac. It's not supposed to be all complicated and intricate. It's just supposed to be a personal, user-friendly tablet experience, and it's supposed to just be approachable and simple. I get that, but you need to go somewhere with the development, because I think that's the issue with iPadOS right now, is it's kind of capped out with what their fundamental definition of what an iPad can be. They're just kind of stuck with, well, that's all it can be, so we can't do much more with it. And that's why, in my view, there's really no reason for anybody to spend more than $600 on an iPad. Either get an iPad Mini, get an iPad Air, or actually don't buy an iPad Air. Get a refurbished iPad Pro from 2018 or 2020, which you can find for $600 or less easily, and that will cover what an iPad fundamentally is good at, which is like the basics, doing some note taking, checking email, maybe some light picture editing, some light video editing. But as far as like pro class workstation goes, if you're spending iPad Pro money, you're capable of buying a Mac, which can do far more and be far faster at it. And it's a shame because the iPad has all these other great perks that go along with it. So I guess that's just Apple's way of trying to get you to buy both. But I think what it's going to result in is just less people buying iPads, because they buy an iPad once and then they're good for like a decade basically. And they're like, yep, still using my iPad Air 2. It works fine. I don't need a new one. And there's people like me with iPad Pros that are about to turn 4 years old, and they're like, yep, there's nothing wrong with this one. I don't need to update it. So if Apple wanted more people buying iPads, they would give them more capability. Praying for devices like Apple glasses every night. Every night we pray. Dual boot would give Apple cover for regulatory pressure instead of allowing sideloading on iOS. Put the open platform on an iOS device. I guess if you count the iPad as an iOS device, which it kind of is. It's not really, but I know it's unrelated. But what do you think about the Eve Spectrum 4K 144 hertz monitor? Is it worth waiting for Apple displays, which has been rumored since forever? I've heard of that monitor. I've seen people review it, but I guess my hesitation with it, to be fair, I don't know too much about the monitor, but I checked it out on a website, and it was kind of like a crowdfunding thing. It was like, put down your deposit and you'll pay less for later. So it's like you put down a reservation for those monitors, and then you hope they deliver by January or February. It's like a startup type approach. They don't feel like an established brand. They don't feel like, they'll probably deliver, but I don't know. It looks cool. I just wonder if they'll actually, deliver on the. I want to wait until, actual customers are getting them delivered and not just review people. But yeah, overall, it's probably a decent backup option if the Apple monitors end up being sucky. I can either get a 2016 MacBook Pro secondhand, but with 16 gigs of RAM, or M1 MacBook Air with 8 gigs RAM for AR development. Yeah, I would definitely say either save up for an M1 Pro or just get the M1 MacBook Air. The MacBook Air is great, and I guarantee you it will probably be better than the 2016 MacBook Pro you're looking at. Not probably. Most definitely, the M1 chip will still be better. Robin Brooks says, I still think we'll get a dual boot option on the iPad Pro eventually, but not the consumer flavors. Yeah, I'm fine with that. I'm all in favor of, like, as long as there's some way to do it. I don't care if it's expensive. I don't care if it's hard to do. Like, I don't care if they bake it into the settings app. I don't care if they charge you a premium for it. And I don't care if they require some crazy specifications for it. Like, I saw someone say, Drew, they're not going to do dual boot on iPad because that would take up too much space. If you had iPadOS and macOS on one device, it would fill up so much of the SSD. Then I was like, okay, then make it so you have to buy the 1 terabyte model. You can get people, you can upsell people on these things. I already think iPad Pros that have a terabyte or 2 terabytes in them is mostly pointless because of how basic the file management system is and how everything you do on the iPad is so limited. Do you need terabytes of storage on that thing? Maybe if it could become a Mac. And you'd said, like, okay, in order to run macOS, it needs to have 16 gigs of RAM and it needs to have at least 1 terabyte of SSD. That way iPadOS can still sit on the same device. I'd be like, okay, great. So the only people that can dual boot macOS are those who paid X amount of dollars, which is some insane number, probably like $1,800 or $2,000. If you spend $2,000 on your iPad, it can double as a Mac. Great. Like, I don't think that's going to cannibalize your Mac sales because it'll still have limited I/O. It probably won't have as good battery life. It won't have as good thermal architecture because there won't be any fans in it. And in this case, it probably wouldn't even have the same silicon as the MacBook Pro. It would just be rocking the M1 or the M2 chip, whereas the MacBook Pros, for the same price, will have better battery life, better I/O, and they'll have the M1 Pro and M1 Max chips available to them. So I don't think cannibalization is a good argument against it. Think they will ever do an Apple TV stick that has been rumored before? It was rumored, but then there was a more recent rumor suggesting that Apple abandoned that plan as to not impede on their luxury perception on the market, which blew my mind. I was like, seriously? Just for the sake of wanting to preserve your freaking it's got to be luxurious. We don't want to actually try with a lower cost Apple TV. At least that's what the internal memo was. They were like, we could do a stick, but it would make us look cheap. So instead, they were focused on bringing the Apple TV app to third parties like Roku and Samsung smart TVs and that kind of stuff. If they made a HomePod with a screen, then I would buy one. Until then, I don't find it useful for me personally. It sounds like they're working on those. I don't know when they're coming out, but there has been talk, and I think Google and Amazon have probably picked up on that. They realized, like, okay, people aren't willing to spend that much money on a smart speaker, and if you do want to charge over $100 for one, it needs to do a little bit more than just play music. If it has a little display that can hook up to your security camera footage and can show you things as you're searching, or it could show Apple Music lyrics, it could answer FaceTime calls, you could play videos off of it. That's why I think the concept of Home OS makes so much more sense, because the HomePod is already running a modified version of tvOS, and if you adjusted that a little bit to make it, so that the HomePod could also run a version of what your Apple TV runs, and it could run tvOS applications, and you could control it through your voice for the most part, but it's still touch if you want it to be. I think there's a way they could make it work, especially with Center Stage. Oh my God, Center Stage makes so much sense on like a HomePod with a display, so that you're in the kitchen and then someone calls you and you answer the call, and then you're walking around, your hands are busy, you're like working on stuff, and the camera just follows around with you. You can hear the person really clearly because it's got a great speaker system in there, and you can see them. Oh, it would be perfect. Robin says, I have a base model M1 MacBook Pro with literally identical specs to my iPad Pro. Just let me dual boot so I don't have to carry both all the time. Yeah, maybe. I guess the logic is just that Apple wants you to buy both, but I don't know. I think that argument falls apart pretty quickly, because the alternative is me just not buying new iPads. That's what I'm doing now, is I'm just going to hold on to my current iPad Pro for years, whereas I may be interested in spending $4,000 or $5,000 on an iPad if it could actually do what my Mac could. Sam says, after watching the podcast series finale, I've been convinced that the Apple Watch Series 7 is a major upgrade. However, other than the battery degradation on my 5, I have no reason to upgrade. I feel like that's pretty much the only reason people upgrade their watches, is they're like, well, it doesn't get me through the day. So that's why I'm kind of babying mine. I've never had the always-on display on, which means that I usually end the day around 65-70% battery, which means I'm putting less cycles on it overall. Of course, I have optimized battery charging turned on. I definitely charge it every night, and I leave it on the charger for a while. So I'm just trying to put as little cycles on this thing as possible, because it is a wonderful watch. And I would love it if... Yeah, I would love it if I could hold on to it for several years. But I know that just like all Apple Watches, eventually it'll get to the point where it barely gets through the day. But I don't know. I admire my wife, because she's still using her Series 3 from 2017, and it still works for her. She still wears it. How would Final Cut work on iPad? The exact way it works on Mac. The problem is you have to make some application that's not dumbed down by the idea that it needs to be a touch interface, because I think there are some fundamental limitations. Whenever you design software for touch only, and you say it has to work with touch, it will have these fundamental drawbacks. just after editing several videos off of LumaFusion on my iPad Pro, which, once they sent out the update so that it supported ProRes, only because the iPhone supported ProRes. So they didn't add it to the iPad out of pros asking for it. They added it because, iCloud needed to support ProRes. But just using LumaFusion, I think the biggest difference is the time head has to be fixed, and you scroll with the timeline back and forth. Whereas in Final Cut, when you move your mouse around, you move the time head, and you can move the timeline. And that just gives you so much more flexibility. I can edit so much faster in Final Cut. Even though LumaFusion is great, it's basically the best designed video editing application you could possibly get on a touch interface. I don't understand how, if they did make Final Cut for iPad, and it's not saying keyboard and mouse required, you have to connect a keyboard and mouse to use it. That's as good as a touch interface can get, because once you start trying to make a time head that you can move around, it gets way too confusing. That's the big advantage of being able to scroll with the Magic Mouse and move it simultaneously. That's why I keep coming back to this mouse, despite the stupid charging method. And despite other people saying, oh, this mouse is better, I like this mouse. Okay, good for you, but with my workflow of how many videos I edit every day and how quickly I need to edit them, Magic Mouse is unbeatable, just because I can move it around and scroll side to side and up and down all at once. So when I'm just like, it's much faster. Biggest and best charging improvement in Series 7 was the fast charging. In 1 hour, I went from 0 to 100%. I'm actually intentionally slow charging my Series 7. I've never fast charged it. I got a fast charging cable with it, but I use MagSafe Duo, and I use, I think it's called a 18-watt brick, which means that my phone wirelessly charges, I think, around 5 watts or 7.5 watts or something. And then my watch charges at the slowest possible rate the Apple Watch will charge at, because I want to baby this thing. Let's see. Chris Norton says, you're live again. What are we talking about? All kinds of stuff. We kicked off with the HomePod Mini not being enough, and how Apple lowered the price of the HomePod, and yet it only doubled the market share. And I say only because market share was incredibly low with the first HomePod. So doubling is essentially like 1% to 2%. LumaFusion is good for me. Don't edit much. It's a great editing program if you don't edit that much. It's a great editing program for the basics. I'll keep saying that. Like, LumaFusion is great for entry-level editing, especially for aspirational content creators out there. You can buy a $300 iPad, download this great app, and do some pretty decent video editing with that app. It's great. But as soon as you want to start to get into more of a pro workflow where time is of the essence and you need to get stuff done quicker and you need access to more tools than LumaFusion has to offer, you're still going to end up needing to go with some kind of more pro-end hardware. It's very, very difficult to get a whole, it's honestly very difficult to find any channel out there that's full-time, that's not, there's smaller channels that do everything off an iPad. I know, I was one of them. But once you get into the big leagues of posting content daily, or posting multiple videos daily, or higher end content, and you're doing it professionally full time, that's when doing everything off an iPad becomes more and more challenging. So you have to opt for a Mac in that case. I've been doing the same way with my 13 Pro, not risking the battery. What's funny is so for those who have just joined, I'm live streaming off of my 13 Pro Max right now. And I don't know how it's impacting the battery. I could check, but it would throw everything off here. But I think if I open Control Center, the stream will freeze. So I don't want to take that risk. But the battery life is good. It's just, often days I will come in here, and because of the Apple ecosystem being so great, I have iMessage and everything, so I can text people, and I have, Twitter on my Macs, and I have everything I need basically to communicate with people. So my phone most of the time just stays in my bedroom. It doesn't leave unless I'm leaving the house. Obviously it leaves, but if I'm just working, I don't typically have my phone at my desk, because there's no point. So now that I might end up live streaming more directly off my phone, it's making me think, okay, now the battery on my 13 Pro Max is going to get used a heck of a lot more, because a lot of the time I would go through a whole day of just working, and I would use my phone light, I wouldn't do too much with it. And by the end of the day, I would check it, and it's like at 80%, 75%. So I was not putting many cycles, or that I wasn't using my phone very much. Not a lot of screen time. And I was like, okay, this is great for the battery health. It's getting really light use, but if I start doing this more often, I'll probably end up putting a few more cycles on here. But the good news is, even with battery health degradation on the 13 Pro Max, it should still easily get me through the day. Um, Probably like 80%. Like, I'm usually not ever hitting 20% at the end of the day, which means that even if the battery health was degraded to below 80%, the battery life is so good and so long on the 13 Pro Max that it should be fine. How well do you think LumaFusion would work on an iPad 9? Probably fine. I mean, not better than obviously all the other iPads, but yeah, I think it would get the basics done. Bit off topic. Do you recommend the iPad apps that deliver similar features to Adobe InDesign? I haven't tried them, but I, in general, recommend people not use Adobe as much as possible, just because they're freaking expensive. If you can get Adobe through your school or through your business or something really cheap, that's great, because Adobe does have an insane amount of customization, and they give you an absurd amount of control over whatever you're working on. But I used to do everything through Adobe, and the rates just kept going up. It was getting insane. They really, really do push that membership model, and they can rake in a lot of cash from people that justify it as just, well, nothing else can be as good as this application, so I would have to compromise if I canceled Adobe. And I'm like, the compromise is worth it. Okay, there's a lot of things Adobe Premiere and After Effects can do that Final Cut can't, but try to figure out if you legit can live without them, because you will save yourself so much money if you switch to one-time purchase applications. Oh my God, like, Adobe's trick is to like get you roped into the software when you're young. That's why they always offer the student discounts, and that's what I was on. And then once you're out of school, they raise the rates progressively. Like, at first it gets a little bit more expensive, and you're like, well, okay, this is what I took classes in, this is what I trained with, so that's what I know. And then a couple of years go by, they'll raise their rates even more, and you'll just be like, well, I guess this is what I use. I can't compromise with another program. So before you know it, you'll end up paying 40, $50 a month for Adobe apps, and you'll just be stuck with it because you're like, well, that's what I know, and I need those features they offer. So I'm always like, try to see if you can get by without those features. Try to find the loophole, find the other alternative route of accomplishing what you're looking for in the apps, because I would say a lot of the time you don't actually utilize the few features that they have going for them off of the one-time purchase alternatives, whether it's Affinity Photo, Pixelmator, Final Cut, LumaFusion, DaVinci Resolve. All of these things are so much cheaper than Adobe, and can do, I think, like 90 to 95% of what you would use Adobe for. So I don't know every workflow. I don't know every use case, but you really, really be convinced that what you're paying for is worth it. Um, let's see. Andre says the HomePod Mini is so good, but they really need to diversify the lineup, or it will get old quickly. Hopefully, there's something good coming next year. I personally think what would expand HomePod market share the most is just fixing the connectivity limitations, which Apple is being too Apple about. I understand the ecosystem and the walled garden thing. I'm heavily involved in that. I'm all in with my watch and my phone, and I love AirDrop. I use AirDrop all the time. I love iMessage. I had to download WhatsApp to talk to my father-in-law, and oh my God, that app sucks. I feel so bad for everybody overseas that's like required to use WhatsApp just because that's what everybody in their country uses. I'm so glad that's not the situation here, because iMessage is so much better than WhatsApp. So, but it's not cross-platform and all that, so I get it. Like, a lot of the times Apple keeps their stuff locked down, and you can only install apps from our app store, and you can only do this from us, and we need to take a 30% cut of the... I get the frustrations, but in this particular case, I really just genuinely think they should open the HomePod to Bluetooth connectivity, so you can pair it with any device that has Bluetooth, and it doesn't have to be just AirPlay. And also maybe even a port or two. If you're going to make a higher end HomePod, let them be tools for the Mac, so like someone can use it as a smart speaker if they feel like it, but also they can use it as, just think about like how good the microphones probably are with all the mics they embed into HomePods. Like you could have onboard microphones that, you know, capture left and right way better than your onboard microphone if you had a wired connection to go through. Like if you're going to keep the headphone jack around on the Macs, and you're going to support AirPods support Bluetooth. You know, you can use AirPods with Android devices. So why does the HomePod need to be so different? And also allowing it to stream any music platform, like keeping it locked down to Apple Music, I think is limiting potentially who's in the market for it. Like I can't justify a HomePod Mini just because I'm on Spotify now. So no, I'm not using the MacBook webcam. I've upgraded. The MacBook's it's here. It's right off here. I'm reading the chat on the MacBook, but I'm live from my phone now. Let's see. Just plug your iPhone with USB-C into your iPad to tether your service. Well, I don't think the iPad cameras are better, but thanks. Tether your service. I think there's only a certain amount of data I can use via hotspot, though. Whereas I can use a lot of data if it's directly off the phone. There's a lot more flexibility with. Would you recommend getting a HomePod Mini compared to other smart speakers? Not necessarily. Like, it's kind of hard to recommend most smart speakers right now. I'm not really happy with any of them. I think they're all kind of dumb. And in the case that they're all stupid, I would say get the cheapest one you can or whatever works with your ecosystem. But if you're going for sound quality, I will still stand by a HomePod Mini is the best sounding mini smart speaker. Maybe I'm just not as picky, but what issues did you find with WhatsApp? I don't like how much data it consumes. I don't like by default when someone sends you a picture, it automatically shows up in the photo library. I don't like, I got spam messages like just a week after downloading it. I got this like, hey, you won a prize. I don't like the UI backgrounds, like the check marks are ugly looking. And I tried to make it simple and basic, and there's no iPad app, so I can't use it from my iPad. Why you stopped using YouTube Music? My brother-in-law got Spotify Family, and he was like, hey, do you want to be part of my Spotify Premium account? And I was like, sure. So if he kicks me off at some point and just decides he doesn't want to do Spotify Family, then I'll just go back to YouTube Music because I get that with YouTube Premium, which I'm not budging on that. I'm keeping YouTube Premium probably for life, just because I can't stand ads on YouTube. And there's so many still. Even when you pay for YouTube Premium, there's a crap ton of ads. I don't understand how there's so many people putting up with the ads YouTube puts there, and then the video starts and there's more ads. It's like, there's so much. Do you use your iMac Pro at all, or is it still a paperweight? It's mostly a paperweight, but I'll occasionally, while I'm like editing a video or something, I'll play a video on the iMac. So it's just kind of turned into a TV. Occasionally I'll check Twitter, but every time I use it, like I'm looking at it right now, every time I use it, I notice the 60 hertz. It's like instantly a thing. I'm like, yep, that's choppy. And I go back to my MacBook and I'm like, that looks so much smoother. It's down to Spotify not being supported on the HomePod Mini, not Apple. I have to wonder, if Pandora can do it, why can't Spotify? I don't know. Anyone can make an app for the HomePod. Spotify just can't ship the features they rant and rave about not being able to make. I think that's the bigger issue. There's probably some app store thing that like, no, you can't have that on the HomePod. What ads do you get when you use YouTube Premium? Do you still get pre-rolls? No, you don't get pre-rolls, but you just get all the sponsorships is what I was referring to. Sorry if you guys don't call those ads, but I consider it an ad. All the channels are like, today's video is sponsored by this, or today's video is sponsored by this. So it's like, that's an ad. That's a promotion that I didn't click for that I'm now having to watch because, I get the channel needs to make money and they've got expenses they want to pay for. I get all that, but man, when does it end? How many? When do we say it's too much? Like how many sponsors and how many ad reads and YouTube ads? YouTube's putting like multiple ads before videos now. And they do ads at the end, of course. So it's like, how far do you have to go? Anyway, sorry, I read that. I'm debating getting rid of all my Google speakers and replacing them with HomePods. What do you think? I don't think it'll make that big a difference having used HomePods for extended periods and used Google speakers and used Amazon Echo for a while. I think at the end of the day, you kind of use them all the same way. You basically just call out. Sometimes it hears you correctly, sometimes it doesn't. In my experience, the Google speakers don't hear you more often. I think Apple, in my experience, hears you a lot better. Um, Google will not hear us when we're calling out to it, and then Google will also start talking when we didn't talk out to it. So it just kind of talks all the time. Do you think sponsors block is just as bad as ad block? Sponsors block essentially skips the part of the video when YouTuber mentions sponsorships. Eh, I don't know. Just because it doesn't technically hurt anything. I don't know. It kind of rides that line. I think the difference is when you use generic like browser ad blocks, the ad is not played and therefore the creator does not earn anything. Whereas if you're just skipping the sponsored section, the money's been spent, the creator gets paid, the advertiser, I guess, doesn't necessarily get as many impressions as they were looking for. So I have less issue with it, but if everybody starts doing it, it might become problematic. Because then the sponsor will be like, hey, our ads aren't performing as well. So you need to change the way it might have an inverse effect, essentially. Oh, thank you for the super chat, Andrew. Appreciate it. He says, glad you don't do sponsorships, makes your videos more fun to watch. I appreciate that. Thank you. I try my best to, just focus on what I find interesting, and I don't find sponsors of any kind interesting. I'm like, if you want to make a video about a service or a product, make a video about that service or product. Don't put that service or product in a video that I click for that I expect a certain subject to be talked about. So I get it. I run my channel differently than probably most because it's becoming increasingly popular to do sponsorships because, channels have expenses and they want to do more, and the more money they have, the more people they can hire, the more equipment they can buy, and they justify that as that makes the videos better. I just personally don't think if I had a ton more money, my videos would be substantially better. And I don't think that's what my channel needs. I just want to be honest and share my opinions and keep doing that and try to make it somewhat entertaining and funny, but also, deep and thinking about things from various angles and getting your mind wrapped around lots of different subjects. So that's what I'm prioritizing, and I really, really like it when videos don't have sponsors in them, and I want to keep making the videos I want to see. So that's what I'm doing. But thank you for the super chat. Lex Friedman does sponsorships the best. Just read their names, maybe a sentence or two, then on with the content. I love that podcast. The problem is not everybody has that kind of control. It's probably easier with a podcast possibly, but it still puts the advertiser in a great position of power if you get to the point where you're relying on their income. And if you're relying on their income to pay your bills and to cover your overhead of your business, then they can change the terms and conditions and you don't have much of a bargaining chip. Like if the advertiser says, hey, we want you to actually spend 2 minutes talking about us instead of 30 seconds. And you say, no, that's too much time. I don't want to talk about you guys for that long. That's going to be too intrusive. And then they go, okay, then we'll take our money elsewhere because this streamer, this podcaster, this creator, he'll do what we want. So you lose out on the brand deal, and you can, struggle a little bit and try to find a advertiser that can abide by your terms and conditions. But as long as there's other people willing to rely on that sponsor income and read out more, then you're going to be worth less. It's like, well, this guy's paying this much to get 2 minutes. Why would we pay you the same amount to get less? We should be getting the same rates. Or if you're only willing to do 30 seconds, then we should only have to pay for a quarter of what they're paying for. So as soon as you get more and more comfortable with that sponsor revenue covering your expenses, it's very quickly like a slippery slope effect. It just gets worse and worse and worse. So that's why my goal is just to not rely on the revenue at all. And also I don't like having to, get told what to say, or having to submit a video and have someone else watch it and then approve it and say, okay, yes, you read it correctly, you can continue. It's like, I make so many videos, I don't have time for all that. I don't want to fuss around with making sure this video is up to my sponsor's standards. Um, yeah, make your own brand and sponsor yourself. Big profit. Today's Tailosive Tech live stream is brought to you by Tailosive movie reviews, because I'm going to watch Spider-Man No Way Home, and then we'll review it and post it on that channel. So there's your sponsor. It's me. Have you ever noticed your phone lists T-Mobile as your carrier? Been on Mint for almost a month and noticed that a couple of times? No, I've never had that. That's weird. I did have T-Mobile as an eSIM for a while when I downloaded the Test Drive app, but that was it. But people can get deals from other brands as well. They can, but the other brands are going to look at the prices that other brands are going with. It's like a standard thing. If all of our podcasts and all of our channels all become dependent on sponsors, then all the advertisers get to raise their rates simultaneously. If one of them raises their rates and the other one goes, yeah, let's all do this, there's not really much motivation. If the advertisers aren't getting much payback on their investment, if more and more people start using sponsor skip bots that like detect the part of the video with a sponsor and they skip it or whatever, then they're going to say, well, this isn't worth it. We're going to either need you to spend more time talking about our product or service, or we're going to take our money elsewhere, and then the show or the people working on it don't get paid as much. So it's not an easy solution. Ads are kind of a necessary evil, but I think that what everyone should basically do is make the content they want to see and make that the priority, in my view. If you're comfortable with sponsors and videos you watch and you watch those all the time, okay, go for it. But what we need less of is people making videos that they wouldn't want to watch. So in my line of YouTube, I want to watch someone that's honest, straightforward, gets to the point, and gives me a unique perspective on an idea, a product, or a service that I feel like, or a creative perspective. And that makes my time feel valuable. That's what I'm looking for with different channels I watch. So I'm gonna keep trying to do that myself. I want to be the channel I want to exist as a fan of YouTube. That's what I'm gonna strive for. And if we have more and more channels start sacrificing their quality of content or sacrificing the value of time, that's when we're going to see more of a running issue. As Travis MCP already talked about, like, tech YouTube is in decline overall. There's just less people watching tech YouTube. And I can't help but think that perhaps the lack of the lack of creativity, or the overuse of clickbait and the amount of things that get rehashed or overdone could steer people away. There's less and less people watching, which is just going to make more and more channels more desperate to do sponsors, and that just kind of snowball effect. So I don't think sponsors should be prioritized as much as they are, maybe, but I don't have people working for me. I don't have a big building, so maybe. But maybe therein lies the problem. Maybe people overcomplicate YouTube videos more than they need to, or they make videos more expensive than they need to. Who knows? I don't have a super successful YouTube channel. I have a decent one, but definitely not as big as other channels out there. So don't listen to me. Let's see. What happened to your merch though? Just didn't have much time for it, so took it away. I figured there was enough merch in the world. There was a time where you put a message from Tailosive Gaming in your first Pixel Rant video. Really? I don't remember that. The founding fathers actually didn't want ad-based newspapers, and they were circulation-based for a long time. Advertisers became a virtual filter on content. Huh. That is interesting. I did not know that. Ads and propaganda is what turns me off from Neuralink. If they're able to trick you to buy their crap, now imagine what they can do with direct access to your brain. Yeah, that's why the important thing to me with Neuralink is that you can power it off very easily. I need an external battery source that I can pull off, so I can use it to maximize capability and brain power. But then if I want to take it off, I can just pull it off and be a normal person again. Do you watch Travis's video or just going off our convo from last week? Both. I remember our convo from last week. For those who don't know, I do have some exclusive live streams of myself filming and editing videos that the channel members can watch. So that's $2 a month. But during one of those live streams, Crazy Tech was asking about what Travis said. And after you mentioned that, I went and watched Travis's video, and I thought he brought up good points that just the tech space in general is seeing less interest. There's less people watching, and there's less going on overall. And it's not just a handful of channels. It's like everybody's experiencing it. Especially if you go look at the analytics on even big channels, like compare how many views and stuff they were getting a few years ago compared to now. There's a general trend that's being followed, and that's why I'm kind of diversifying my content more with EV, because I think electric vehicles are going to get progressively more interesting over the next decade, and smartphones are going to get progressively less interesting. I think they already have. They've kind of declined in interest, as even me as a tech reviewer, I'm planning on holding on to this phone for several years because I don't think they have much going for them, and tech has gotten so good. That's what Travis was emphasizing. Is like when technology has been this ironed out and this reliable and it works this well, and they can't really come up with that many new features anymore, there's very, very little motivation to upgrade your tech. So people just kind of keep what they have and hold on to it for a long time. And why would you watch videos or reviews on stuff that isn't that different from what you already have? So do you think I should start a tech channel? If that's what you want to see, then yes. If you feel like there's a type of content or there's types of videos that you want to see that no one is making, then yes, you should still make one. That doesn't mean you shouldn't accept the situation, though, that there is still a decline in the overall market. I wouldn't quit your day job or fail all your classes in college and school because you're like, don't worry, I'll become a tech YouTuber. I don't need to worry about all those things. Definitely have a backup plan. I had one for quite some time before I did YouTube professionally. I was doing YouTube on the side as I was going through school, and then once I got out of school, I started working a manual labor Mandarin Ranch job as I was doing YouTube. And then it wasn't until YouTube was consistently bringing in enough money to live off of that I said, okay, I'm going to quit this job. But I still had things I could fall back on. So I definitely would say, like, have a safe plan and then try to see if you can get YouTube working. And if you can, then great. But just understand there's basically no guarantees in the YouTube world. The other problem with the tech space is there's likely more tech channels than there ever have been. There's so many people all trying to do the same thing, and they're all trying to cover the same subjects, and we're all trying to cover the same products that come out. And when there's so many people all posting the same thing, we all drown each other out because a viewer can't watch all of these videos. They have to pick and choose which channels they want to watch, and that makes the landscape very, very competitive, and it makes the market of tech videos very saturated with so many options. There's no chance that someone can watch all of them. So basically, the more channels there are, the less each one is going to get in viewership because everyone's going to find their own niche, and that's not necessarily a bad thing if we can all live off it. But it's a challenge, I guess. It's a trick. It's a lot of work. But that's why I would say, yeah, it definitely helps if you enjoy it. Because a lot of YouTube is not as forgiving, where you'll spend tons of time on a project and you won't see that much return on it. You could spend a lot of work on something and not that many people will appreciate it. So if you enjoy working on YouTube videos and you enjoy making them and you don't need them to get a ton of views or you don't need them to make a lot of money, then that's going to put you at a severe advantage over someone that doesn't really enjoy working or doesn't really care about the process. They just are trying to get famous and they just want to get as many clicks as possible and many subscribers as possible. That guy's going to be a lot more miserable because he's not going to be able to get the numbers he wants. Did you film the Hayflix video from Tailosive TV at the ranch? No, that was at my friend's house. My friend's house out of town, but no, that was not at the ranch I worked at. That was a different place. Andre says, I'm going to part-time and work after Christmas, so I was going to start it then. My contract and work ends in September, so that gives me 9 months to see what's up. just say give it your all. If you enjoy it, then you'll at least be getting, joy out of it. If you don't enjoy the process of, working on a video, coming up with a subject and, thinking about it, filming it, and putting it all together, if you enjoy all that, then even if the videos don't do good, you'll have a good time. But if you're telling yourself, I have to become a full-time YouTuber by this point, you're kind of setting yourself up for a lot of disappointment potentially, because we don't know how the algorithm works. Let's be honest. People pretend they do, but it changes. It's always fluctuating with what things it promotes, what things it doesn't. And there's so many people posting similar types of stuff. If you don't have something that separates you or makes you feel unique, that like, why should someone watch you over someone else, then it can be very, very challenging. So just I would just say, don't force yourself to the point that you're convinced I'm a failure if I can't make this work, because what worked for one channel won't work for another. That's another thing I keep trying to remind people. It was just because Mr. Beast found a lot of success with his like give money to people and do these crazy challenges and stuff, that doesn't mean someone else could do what he did and get the same results, because now there is a Mr. Beast. Now there is a channel doing that. So as soon as there's more channels doing the same thing, they're all becoming copycats. And already we're seeing that. There's so many like, group YouTubers and house YouTubers that rent out these big places and try to do all those challenges and stuff. And they all try to find the same kind of success, and they don't see it, and they get accused of course, being copycats, and they're all falling behind, and it gets oversaturated, and before you know it, then whatever you attempted can't be repeated. So if I tried to make tech videos today using the same strategy I did back in 2014 or 15 when I started doing YouTube, it probably wouldn't have worked out. It's a lot of right place, right time, plus luck, plus effort, plus energy, plus enjoyment, plus execution. It's like this really, really complicated formula that's constantly changing. So that's why you don't rely on one thing. You have multiple sources of income. I would certainly say yes, in the early phases of YouTube, it's a very good idea. You shouldn't come into YouTube expecting to make a profit quickly. I would agree with that, yes. In fact, if anything, expect to lose money on YouTube for a long time. I heard the fast charger included in the Series 7 wasn't actually higher wattage. It is just more efficient design. Yeah, I think I read that too. It's not technically pulling more watts. They just found a way to more efficiently charge the battery, yeah. The second a video hits 50% likes, YouTube immediately stops recommending it. Below 50% still works, though. That's funny. I'm going to watch No Way Home tonight. Why do YouTubers make videos longer than 10 minutes, even for in-depth? That's why I like your channel, generally under 10 minutes. You'd have to ask them. I don't know. It depends. I think there are certainly some videos that go into a lot of depth that need to be over 10 minutes. Like most Pyrocynical videos, most Marcus House videos, or What About It videos. They sometimes have some fluff and sponsorships that you could cut out, but then they wouldn't make as much. So I don't, when I'm recording a video, I don't think about like, I want this to be 10 minutes. I want this to be 5 minutes. I just think I'm going to make my case for this subject. I want to completely express all of my opinions as best I can. And then I'm going to cut out all of the dead air and make it as concise as possible. So sometimes as concise as possible ends up being 40 minutes. Because there is a lot of details, obviously, you could skip over. And there's always commenters that think they're creative. Like, this video could be one sentence. It's like, yeah, pretty much any video can be set. You could summarize all of Star Wars into a sentence if you wanted to, but you would lose a lot of detail, and you would lose a lot of the points that the artist or the creator was trying to make along the way. So it's just that question of how much do you want included, how much is worth saying, how much isn't worth saying. And in my view, the length of a video has very little to do with the duration. Like, you can make a 20-minute video that flows really quickly, and before you know it, it's over. And you can also make a 5-minute video that feels like it takes forever because of how it's paced and because of how much dead air you include, or how slow you talk. It's I don't think the minutes the video I don't think that matters as much as people think it does. Robin says she likes a good mix of short and long form content, which is why I'm watching a stream right now. Yeah, I do too. There's some channels I'll watch quick little uploads, and then there's other channels I'll watch like hour long, 2 hour long podcasts and live streams. So that's what I'm trying to do. I try to do the edited stuff and keep it short and keep it simple, and then I also try to do the long form. I think there's benefits to both, so there's no real reason to just restrict yourself to one or the other. I'm glad you like No Way Home, Crazy Tech. Take care. Let's see. Is this for 20 years ago? These people would be trying to get jobs at magazines or something. There would just be so much less volume of content, signal to noise ratio. Pretty wild. I don't know. 20 years ago? Yeah, I guess they would be trying to get jobs at magazines. What is your time zone? Found it odd that you posted at 2 to 3 a.m. the other day. I'm in the same time zone as Apple. So sometimes I'll upload a video and I'll leave a video uploading as I go out. So then I'll be like out visiting people and out and about, and then come home and go like, oh wait, the video's not done. So I'll come home late at like 11 o'clock or midnight or something and hit publish, which in that case, if you're on the Eastern time zone, that would be at like 3 a.m. But I don't have an intentional, like, I only drop videos at this time. I'm like, I'm just going to post them as soon as they're ready. I don't need a specific schedule and that kind of thing. I don't have videos sitting waiting to publish very often. Sometimes if I take a trip, I'll schedule videos so that stuff comes out while I'm away. But for the most part, a video drops when it's done uploading. There's usually not much time between then. Let's see. You can summarize anything into one word. That's true. There's always ways to summarize things to save time, but you can lose a lot of intricacies. Sometimes YouTubers force a video to be short instead of it naturally being longer or shorter, but in the world of TikTok attention spans, everything is long to people. Yeah, that's true. I feel like they kind of can coexist. I don't really think TikTok replaces like 5-minute edited videos on YouTube. It's like they're different genres. Yeah, I try to be efficient with my video editing because I want to get my ideas and opinions out there in a quick manner that doesn't take too long or doesn't cost that much. So that's why, I edit the way I do. But I think people make it unnecessarily complicated online sometimes. They're like, oh, we got to add this, and we have to talk about this, and I can make more if I drop this in the video. It's like, okay. Let's try to streamline everything as much as possible. How do you get so many video ideas? What do you do when you run out? I pray. Yeah, sometimes the issue is my brain is constantly thinking about most tech subjects. It's genuinely a problem that it feels like a disorder that I kind of harness the benefits of by having a tech YouTube position where I'm able to make videos for a living, because I do think about, iPhone upgrades and Mac upgrades and timelines and release cycles and all the things we talk about. I do think about throughout the day. And sometimes it's a problem if I'm at like a social gathering or a family event and I'm trying to just live in the moment, but in the back of my head, I'm thinking about iPhones, I'm thinking about watches, and I'll be looking at my own watch and I'm thinking about the future of tech and what it'll be. So I just kind of have this like never ending explosion, and sometimes being able to finally just hit record and speak on a subject allows me to make peace with the idea, so I can send it off and say, okay, there's my idea. People can take it or leave it. People can tell me I'm wrong or right, or they agree with me or disagree with me. So I'm not. Other channels probably are thinking about like, how can I make this shot more interesting? How can I get really good B-roll? How can I improve my lighting? I don't dwell too much on that, as you guys can tell. I'm not super into like, it's gotta look professional. I'm just like, most of the time when people are commenting on videos, very few of the comments are generally about, wow, this was shot really well. Occasionally you get that, especially on the big tech channels. But for the most part, I would say more like 60 or 70% of the comments are more about, he brought up a good point here, or I like what he said about this, or I like his ideas for this. It's more about what they're saying, not so much the visuals, which I think are often overlooked anyway. So you can't ignore how the video looks entirely because it does matter a little bit, but I just think that a lot of channels probably spend too much time on how the videos look, not so much what they're trying to say. What colorful HomePod mini do you like best? I guess the blue one, but I just don't like how any of them have the white glass at the top. I found the Tailosive editing style to be very effective. Oh, good. Yeah, when I run out of ideas, I just kind of go on Discord or Twitter or check the news and just try to find things that spark that voice in my head. Do you think the MagSafe Duo is the spiritual successor of the iHome? Speaker dock alarm clock has been phased out by iPhone's decent speakers and features and the alarm display on the watch? Kind of. I would say HomePod Mini probably eats into iHome a little bit more, but yeah, the visuals can't be so terrible that people notice them very easily. So you got to have a decent amount of good visuals, but yeah, most of this channel I would say is just things that an Apple Sheet brain is thinking. But yeah, I do love MagSafe Duo. I use it every night, but certainly don't need iHome anymore. That's for sure. Yeah, those were the days. Thank God we're done with that. But I got to get going now. But I appreciate all the questions and all the super chats. I don't know if you do outside one, maybe get a Rode Wireless. Get some Rode Wireless goes. See, I don't care too much about my audio, just like you don't care too much about the grammar in your chat. So we can hear each other at the end of the day. And I know what you meant at the end of the day. So I appreciate you all for tuning in. But I'm glad the Streamlabs test seemed to work okay. No Starlinking today. How's that? Anyway, hope you have... before I forget, before I sign off, let me drop the video that I made for today. Oh, no. Don't do that. It keeps jumping me to the Livestream page. Come on. Okay. This is... Safari is trying to be way too smart. I'm going to post the video now. And I will drop the link in the chat so you guys all now have something to watch. Talking about M2 refresh cycle. You can form an opinion, then back it up really well, even when the entire internet tries to argue with it. Thank you, Skylar. All right, take care, all. Have a good day. Bye-bye.